to this edition of the Miss Education of the American. And today you are in for a treat. We have our guest today, who is Pratia Jordan, who is going to talk to us about the intersection of faith and education. And she actually has some more alliterative wording to go with that. And I'll let her share that with you. So welcome and thank you so much, Pratia, for joining us today.
I'm super excited and very grateful for the invitation.
Well, I was like looking at your page and saw like how it has blown up and just like the wisdom that you share and just the tidbits that you
I'm
give. I
trying.
was like, okay, she's got to come on and share some of her enormous wisdom with us, and just also knowing that you are an all-star teacher too. So I wanted to showcase
Thank you.
So can you?
I greatly appreciate it.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and this page that I've alluded to and how that has really caught fire? What's the genesis of it and why did you create this space?
The genesis, no pun intended.
Exactly. You got it.
I love it. Okay, so I'm an educator. First I'm a student. I'm a student. I'm a scholar. I love learning. I recall applying for the Oxford thing that we met, and I was sharing my essay with my husband. He was kind of proofing it over, and he was like, "What is this that you wrote?" And one of the statements was that teaching is the biggest con that there is, because I love being a student, and being a teacher allows me to do that, and I get paid for it. Maybe not as much as I should be, but but I get paid to learn. I get paid to be a student and then to help other students along the way. And so for me, it's like perfection. It's like, I can't believe that this is a career path that I am able to pursue. And so my name is Pratia, and that came from my mother, and she said that this is the name that God told her to give me, and it means she shall pray. And so I have had a very interesting relationship with prayer throughout the course of my life. You know how sometimes you run from the thing that you're supposed to run to, and you kind of go back and forth as you're figuring out life. And so that's where my passion is, and my vocation and my occupation just so happen to align in this perfect way. And so out of that, a lot of people would ask me for hints and help and things of that nature about how did I get things in my classroom to flow and to go the way that I did, and working with all populations and yet weaving in and out in between those different groups. There's still a sense of excellence and productivity and just excitement and growth that happens. And I would tell people, it's just Jesus. it's just
Like,
Jesus.
yeah, give me some of that Jesus.
And I think people thought I was being, facetious or anything of that nature. And I'm like, no, really though. But seriously, it is prayer and it is pedagogy. And it is the combination of those two that, was the inspiration for my blog and from everything that's grown from that, because that's really the intersection of who I am. It's prayer and my faith and learning from the master teacher, and it is pedagogy, and it is my faith that drives me to be excellent and to excel in my craft and my skill in my pedagogy. And so for me, those two things can't happen one without the other. And so it's been a wild ride. I started it 6 months ago, and at the encouragement of my husband, who was like, get out there and do it and make it happen. So I finally did, and within the first couple of weeks, I wrote something that was on my heart to write for educators, and it was just like, I got to get this out. I have to put it in words, and I need to share this at this time because of everything that we were going through. And I put it out there, I shared it, I went for a drive, and when I came back, it was everywhere. I mean, literally all around the globe, and some 6 million or so people have seen it or touched it or been impressed by it. My love letter to educators is what I call it, hashtag not every teacher. And ever since then, it's just been a sharing of community of encouragement and inspiration.
Okay, so Precious, you got to tell us, you got to give us, share a little bit about what was in this love letter. Because to say that first of all, how amazing is that? How
I,
amazing is that
I
timing
was,
that you
yeah.
listened to your husband and that you went forth and just created what was in your heart, and then it touched
Mhm.
so many other people's heart. So what's in it?
It really is just an encouragement to the teachers who feel like they're not seen. I love education. I love being a part of this system and this community, but I know that there are teachers who are trying. They are doing their best. I mean, there were teachers who were driving up to the school to get access to the Wi-Fi so that they could do IEPs and 504s. And
Yeah.
there were teachers who went out and were buying hotspots. And I mean, during this time period right after the shutdown started to take place and we were kind of transitioning from what we thought was going to be an extra long spring break
Yeah.
into this whole remote
Right now.
learning world.
Exactly.
And it was just, I wanted to let teachers, my co-laborers is what I call them, I wanted to let them know that they were seen. And I think in education we kind of have this catch-22 thing where we see people who are, I mean, almost literally killing themselves trying to be the best teachers possible. And we encourage that and we elevate that and we're like, yeah, go all out and, making all the sacrifices. And, it's a pandemic, but you're driving to your children's houses and things of
Not
that nature.
sleeping and
And we kind of have this catch 22 because we see those teachers and they're not necessarily even trying to be seen, but we elevate them so much that it can start to feel like if I'm not sacrificing
exactly.
all of me,
Yes.
am I really doing my job well? And so my love letter was for those teachers that it's like not every teacher can make the same level of sacrifice, but that doesn't mean that every teacher is not sacrificing something. And that was really just the heart that we see you. Not every teacher can leave their house in a pandemic and go and, be with their other children face to face. Not every teacher can go and spend copious amounts of money on making a teacher space and a Zoom that, looks like the classroom. But we see you for those teachers who often feel like they're going underserved and underlooked and overlooked, that we still see you and you are still a fantastic, awesome teacher. You may not have all the Bitmoji classrooms and everything else, but that does not mean that what you are doing is not valuable. And I really wanted to speak to the heart of those teachers because I know what it's like to feel like, am I giving enough? Am I
Yes. Am
doing
I doing
enough?
enough? I think that's
Yeah.
the eternal struggle for all teachers. Am I doing enough? And something you said struck me. You talked about just feeling underappreciated. Do you think that that's one of the gifts of this pandemic that through this people have been able to see that even all levels of educators give so much of themselves because we've been on display. Now we've
Yes,
opened our classrooms, and
we
that's
really
really a
have.
good thing. We've deprivatized. We've talked about it for a long time in education. What does it mean to deprivatize our classrooms? Well, now our classrooms are in the living rooms and in the hallways and in the bedrooms of people's homes. And so there is no more private classrooms. People get a chance to see all the great things that teachers have been doing all along.
hmm I agree. I think that, bringing the world into our classroom, into the intimacy of what it means to sit with 20 to 30 to sometimes 40 or more minds and engage in this education process is very eye-opening. And for some it can be scary, and for some it can be like, a wild adventure of having people monitoring and giving feedback, and then also having to explain sometimes why you're doing what you're
Yeah.
doing, being able to bring parents and other guardians into our world. And the thing is, everybody's gone to school. So everybody thinks they know what
Exactly.
it means to be a teacher and what it means to be a student. But it's not really until you get onto the other side of this that you're like, oh, I had no idea.
Yep. And we always get stuck in that space that we were in, right? So
Yes.
a lot of parents were like, well, when I was in school, and I'm like, well, I don't mean to call you old, but
Look,
education looks a little different than when you were in school. And
just a
so,
smidge.
exactly, exactly. Have you started back to school yet?
Yes, we are on week 4. We started early. We shifted our calendar in our district to jumpstart, and so we came back super early. It feels like it to me because I didn't really get a summer, but we've been in for about 4 weeks now, and we are
Online.
moving and grooving, and also in need of a break.
So, are you guys, you're remote, right?
We're 100% virtual, yes. Everything is online, and we will be completely online for at least another few weeks. We do not have a specific target date for when we will be back on campus yet. It's very much so going to depend on the fluctuation of, the numbers in our state here. And so we don't have a specific date, but we'll be virtual for at least another, I want to say 3 to 4 weeks.
So I think that teaching itself is a faith endeavor. I
Mhm.
think that teaching is this act where you sow these seeds that might, like, faith is the things hoped for and the things unseen. And so you might not see, you hope that your students get it, and you might not see it in that by the end of that school year, but you just have to have faith that ultimately that knowledge will grow. And I also think that it's an act of love. How do you see teaching? Do you see it in the same way? What is the intersection of kind of faith and teaching for you?
I completely agree. I think, regardless of what your faith systems are, that just hope in humanity, is a form of faith. And so, as a teacher, like you were saying, we're writing these lesson plans and we're putting together these assignments and we're coming up with all of these things that we think are going to be engaging and fun and inspirational and life changing for our students. And we do all of that with hope. We do all of that with faith that if we're doing the right stuff, we may be looking at research, we may be looking at best practices, and we may be looking information about our population in particular and adjusting how we present, how we inform, how we engage. But we're doing all of that based on faith, a hope that if we get it right, we have a chance to change a life.
Exactly.
And so no matter what your faith system is, I think there's just a little bit of hope in humanity, and hope in yourself that you can be a vessel that can properly channel what it is that you're trying to, get your students to absorb. And so I do think that teaching as a vocation for anybody is an act of faith and an act of love because it requires so much sacrifice
Oh my,
for us to
so
be able
much
to do it.
giving of yourself that I don't think people ultimately realize. Just the unselfish nature of a teacher is pretty darn significant and high.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot because you're working with people, you're working with people's children.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most precious gift that anybody gives to the world is themselves and then their children. And so to take on the mantle of responsibility to say, you can trust me, that's one of the conversations I have with my parents at the beginning of the year. I'm like, I know you don't know me, and, I know we're going to get to know each other in the course of this relationship, but I just want to say thank you for trusting me. And I want you to know that I value that trust that you're giving. And this was before I had kids. Now I have two, and I'm like, whew,
I know
child.
that is real faith, right? That
It's a
they're
real
doing.
thing. And
Yeah.
it's everybody is kind of having faith because parents and guardians have faith that when they send their children off to school in the morning, that they are going to be cared for, loved on, they're going to be taught well, that they're going to be kept safe. Like that's this everybody in this system is operating off mustard seed, faith that things are going to work properly, that if I do my job and you play your role and you play your role and we all manage our responsibilities, that this relationship will be fluid and healthy and vibrant. My faith is the of that. I have up on my workboard a nod to Colossians 3:23, which just says, everything that you do, work as unto the Lord. And so for me, that's the driving force of, how do I take this lesson and make it amazing? Sure, I could just kind of put something together and you could get the basics of what you need. And then I look up and I see work is unto the Lord. And I think, would I turn this in if the Lord's children were in my class? Is this what I would want to present? Is this my best effort? Not to the extent that I'm trying to wear myself out or flip over tables and, do all the things, but it's just for me. Am I putting forth my best effort? Am I using the gifts that God gave me? Am I putting those things work in order to produce the fruit that I'm hoping to see, or that I may never see, but that I do hope flourishes, even if I never get a chance to see it. And so that's where my motivation comes from. My desire is to please God, and to do that, you have to love His people,
Mhm.
and you cannot not love people and not want what's good and what's well for them, what's going to make them happy and healthy and whole. And so, I think sometimes when people think about an intersection of faith and any, occupation, but especially in education, they think of indoctrination, or they think of trying to evangelize,
Yes.
or people turning their class to a pulpit. And it's like, I have no desire to do any of those things. I'm not trying to convert souls or anything of that nature. I'm trying to display God's love to everybody that I meet. And so it's very interesting sometimes coming across other believers who are educators, and we have a different perspective on what it means for my faith and for my job to intersect. Because for me, it means that I want to ensure that any person that I encounter in my classroom, in my family, in my community, they feel loved above anything else. That's it. Not a preaching, not a teaching, not a verse, not a conversion, not a do you know Jesus. It is, how can I serve you? Because
Mhm.
that's what Christ did. Christ came to serve, not to be served. So when I am encountering people, different of different organizations, of different cultures and ethnicities, the question doesn't change because of who you are or what you look like. It is, hi, I'm Mrs. Jordan. I'm so happy to meet you. How can I serve? That's it, because that is.
That's just powerful in and of itself. Just that powerful statement. How can I serve you? Who says that? Who really says that and believes that?
Chick-fil-A.
That is
Chick-fil-A.
correct. They do. They do. They do.
Borrowed it from Jesus and Chick-fil-A.
Yes, yes. But let me ask you this. So when because you alluded to in the beginning that part of how you came about the website was because so many people were asking you, so many other educators, how are you doing that? And I've seen videos of you teaching, so I know the gift that's in you and just also the enthusiasm that you bring to the classroom. I'm like, how does she still have all that energy with little kids? So I see it. It is apparent in you. So how do you coach them then, and maybe coach non-believers into exhibiting that love that you say is an outpouring of you?
I think for me, it starts with a passion for purpose. And for me, because I am passionate about what I do, I can't help but do it with like all of me. It's like I can't half step. And so one of the first things that I would like to converse about with people is, what's your why? We always come back to that. What gets you up in the morning? What motivates you? What drives you? Because truthfully, every person who is in a classroom educating, their why is not teaching. And so the conversation start with, what is your why? It doesn't mean that you can't be a good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
To clarify, it does not mean that because your passion is not teaching that you cannot also be a good teacher. But I do think it is important to have a foundation of understanding what drives you and motivates you, because then you can begin to play around with the different factors of your environment or of your motivation, intrinsic or extrinsic, and put that together in order to elevate your teaching. And so it's more so about, if this is your passion and purpose, how do we channel that? If it's not, but you have something different, but people need real jobs and real paychecks to pay real bills.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we make these two connect so that your why can still motivate you to do your what, which is to be a good teacher? So if we start, I tend to try to start there, because a lot of stuff is like, oh, if you follow this lesson plan, or if you read these directions, anybody can
It's a checklist.
facilitate.
Yeah, it's a
It
checklist,
becomes a checklist,
and it's
and
not
I'm
you know, and then that doesn't create lasting impact and
change.
change.
Exactly. And so my method is to get to the heart of what is pushing, motivating, or driving somebody, and often to kind of help them get to the heart for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people end up in education for a variety of reasons and never really stop to think, wait, did I actually want to do
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
It made sense. It come out of college, or somebody recruited you, or your friend was doing it. And so beyond just kind of helping teachers teach better, really my heart is for helping people figure out what their purpose is,
Mm-hmm.
helping people figure out what um, drives them. When I was working in my master's program for counseling, I ended up doing a lot of vocational counseling, and I loved it. I did not think that I would, because I was like, I help people figure out a job. What is that? But in the process of doing that, I began to understand why I liked it so much. And it was just because, for me, it was not a hard struggle to figure out what drove me.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved education. I love connecting and helping with people.
Yeah.
And so for me, teaching and counseling, they just kind of
Yes.
mixed together. And it was just like, boom. And it wasn't until I got to college that I realized everybody did not have this epiphany at
Mm-hmm.
such a young age. And that is what made me think, oh, because I know what it's like to live life driven by a purpose. And I can't imagine what it's like to not have that. I would imagine it feels lost, disconnected. And so it kind of became a passion of mine to help other people find their passions and their purpose, because I know for me how much that centered me and how much that helped me be focused, as far as for what my future was concerned. And so oftentimes it's not just about, okay, you talk too much in the classroom, classroom management skills, need some help. That we get there. We do
Yes,
get there.
exactly.
We do
Exactly.
get there.
Exactly. That's ancillary stuff. That's important stuff.
It is important,
It is important
please,
stuff. But if you
especially the
don't have
classroom.
the foundation of
Yeah,
like centering of self and like you said of purpose, then you're never gonna get there anyway because you won't
yeah.
have that motivator.
Because really what I find is that people who enjoy what they do it well. For the most part, people who enjoy what they are doing, they want to do it well. They want to excel at it. They want to be good at it. There are varying levels of what that means on an individual basis. But when you enjoy what you do, you want to do it and you want to be good at what you do. And so, sometimes it starts with just that conversation of, is this what you want to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, that's okay. We can work with that as long as we can figure out what can drive and motivate you in this arena. But let's start with
Can I interrupt you real quick? Because
yeah.
now my mind is going down the path of, Pratia, we're in a time where I think teachers are questioning their very passion and purpose right now. I think
Hmm.
in this new space where this is hard, let's really just acknowledge that for
Yes.
everyone, like teaching in this space is difficult. and not what we intended to do, right? And
Mhm.
so, how do people who are at this point of kind of disillusionment and questioning themselves, how do they recenter and find that passion and purpose again? What would you say
Here's
to them?
here's something I totally believe in, and I got this from my little sister, so I'm gonna shout out to my little sister.
To the
Okay,
little sis, go ahead on.
my
Teaching the
little
big sis.
sister, yes, very wise. She took what she called a year of jubilee. She's an educator, like me, and she took a year of jubilee after 7 years in the classroom, 7 years in the classroom, and this past year she took off of teaching and began to kind of try out some other things. Now she's going back to education, so it's not like an abandonment,
Mhm.
but it did give her breathing room.
Mhm.
I totally believe in the concept of a gap year or a year
Yeah.
of jubilee.
Yes.
And I know we did not
And it's
not
not just for adults. I mean, for young people, an
it
adult
is
can do
not.
it.
I completely believe in that. I have a passion in the future for developing a nonprofit that allows for people to do that. And I have a whole vision. I'm very excited about. My husband and I argue about who came up with it first.
Mm. Well, I want to be a
but
test subject.
but I think that um, you know, so often we have this narrative in education that to be a good educator, you have to be 1000% committed to education. You have to love everything about it. And that if you don't, that for some kind of way you're failing as an educator. There is nothing wrong with questioning everything,
Mm.
especially when everything is upside down. So I think the first step is to give yourself permission to question and to doubt and to be frustrated and upset about the state of education, about the inequities in education, about racism in education. Be angry. The Bible says, be angry and sin not. There's nothing wrong with being angry about things that are worth being angry about. And there's nothing that's going to diminish your skill or your heart for teaching just because you're frustrated
Yeah.
at what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to separate that and really destroy that narrative that to be a good teacher, you can't say anything negative about what you do or anything negative about anything that's surrounding education, because all of a sudden you're like, well, if you don't like it, then don't do it.
Well, there's a power in acknowledging that, right? Because then I can
Hmm.
release. If I can
Exactly.
acknowledge that, then I can release those things and say, okay, I said my piece about that. And then how am I going to move beyond that then?
Yes. And I think there's the other part, which is just the reality. So after you have that release and you talk to your teacher besties or you get within your affinity groups and kind of, share and unburden and all of those things, then you have to think about the reality of bills,
Mhm.
of, I know people think about their not pensions, but like they've been
Yeah.
have X amount of years, they're thinking about retirement. There's a reality piece to it.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that we are real people with real bills and real paychecks, and we need to be realistic about how we manage our responsibilities.
Mm.
But along with that, I think we need to give ourselves space to consider a different future.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean that you hate teaching or you ran from education, but there are many ways that you can serve students and families and communities that may not be in the classroom.
That's
And
good. That is so good. So do you say consider other futures?
consider other futures. And that's not we so much of the time we make it seem like people flee from teaching and people quit teaching and people quit education, but honestly there are a variety of ways that you can serve teachers and educators and students and families and communities, and all of those are necessary. It reminds me of the verse in the Bible where he talks about all the body parts have a responsibility, and each one of them are significant, and it's important that we work in conjunction with each other. And so it's like you think about a pinky toe is like this. this little big, it's just a pinky toe. But if you're missing a pinky toe, you're unstable.
Able to.
Like it helps keep you balanced. And so it's like there's not lesser roles, or if there's not more important, there's different. And I think if we can acknowledge the significance of difference, then we can acknowledge that each person can have a role and a responsibility to play. And if we work together versus against each other, or castigating or condescending
Mhm.
towards each other, then really we can kind of imagine new avenues that we can be teachers and maybe not necessarily have to be in the classroom. And that's okay.
Yes. Yes. Because not everybody is built for it, right?
And not everybody is built to do it forever.
Yes, exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's okay. Teaching is a bit different because somebody who works in corporate for 20 years or so, they expect to climb a ladder of some sort to indicate that they're making progress. And it's like, well, I've been a seventh grade teacher for 20 years. So if I've been a seventh grade teacher for 20 years, does that mean that I didn't grow, that I didn't make progress? No. But also, if I choose to leave the classroom and engage in education in different forms, that is also worthy. And so I think when we find weight, worthiness, and value in all of the roles that we play, we can sometimes stop looking at other people jealously, like they got out
Yes.
and
Yes.
I'm still
Yeah.
stuck.
With the bars on looking like, oh, yes. Yes.
It's like they got out and I'm still stuck. And it's like, free yourself.
Yeah.
You
And they
be
don't think
free.
about the damage too that does to kids because they feel that. They sense that. Like, I don't
Oh,
know
sweet.
how many teachers have you known that have been close to retirement? And I'm like, you should have just gone a couple of years ago because your pension, baby, is,
Those are the RIP teachers. They are resting in place,
yeah,
retirement in place. They
yeah.
just holding out, counting down the years, and kids know.
Kids
Oh,
know. Kids
oh, do
know.
the kids know?
Yeah, they know. They know.
They know.
Because you can't
They
make
do.
it with them. There's no. That's what one thing I loved about teaching middle school. Like they'll call you out in a minute. They're like, you
Oh,
don't look like
yes.
you look good. You don't look like you want to be here, Miss Rembert. And I'm like, okay, well, thank you. And
So
now I
let's have a
listen.
conversation. Right. The kids always know. It's just that's the way that it is. I teaching is performative. It is. Not that you cannot be your authentic self. I definitely love the variety of personalities and personas that people bring into the classroom. There's no one way to be a good teacher. I know sometimes certain personality types kind of get elevated
Mhm.
as, oh, you have to be this and that, and that's what makes teaching excellent. And sometimes those get blasted across all the screens and the marquees, and so you start to feel like, well, I'm not
Right.
really hyped like
Exactly.
that. It's
Yeah.
7:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm not a morning person. And so I think that once we shed those expectations, those narratives that teaching has to look and feel a certain way in order to be good, I love the diversity
Mm.
that you get to see in education, because the kids, they can tell. They know when you're being
Yeah.
fake.
Yeah.
They know when you're being real, and they can appreciate that. And I think it's so important that we model for our students that you are acceptable, that
Exactly.
you are acceptable as you are. And I think that we best do that when we come,
Our
you
authentic
know,
selves.
as our authentic selves. My kids know me. I have a certain level of, perkiness and whatnot, but also I am not going to be like super over the top. I'm
Mhm.
corny. I'm very corny in my classroom. And I love it. I'm a word nerd. They know that.
Yeah.
So it's freeing for students to see themselves in you and in their other teachers, and to see diversity and persona and personality that empowers them to feel comfortable bringing their authentic selves. into the classroom, into the education space. And you can tell because you'll see one kid in one teacher's classroom
And they're totally different students.
and
They're
they are a totally
totally
different
different
student
students.
in
And it
another
happens to me
classroom.
conversely, right? So I'm like, oh my goodness, this student does A, B, and C in my classroom. And then I go and I look, I'm like, oh, you are not cutting up over here. Why are
What's
you,
happening?
yes, why are you cutting up in my class? And it's just like in the classroom, especially when I was a middle school teacher, I am very too much. Kids said I was extra, and I would agree. And so, just like my extraness does not always match other people's extraness, and so there were some kids where we were too extra together, and they just needed a teacher that was more mellow. I had a teacher next door to me, and she had her lights off, and she, Tracy was nice and more gentle than I, and we're over there like, okay, dance party. And so, and they, and they needed both of those, but I could
Yes.
see like little Jimmy went to her class and he was able to sit down and be still. And Jimmy in my class was like, no, we're extra. This is where we get to be extra. So I totally understand that and appreciate that.
Yes, and that's okay. It's one of my favorite things about teaching middle school is because kids are transitioning from having only had one or two teachers until now they have six teachers. And they're like, whoa, what
Personality
just
overload,
happened?
right?
And it's like, welcome to the real world
Mm-hmm.
where you have to learn how to adjust. You have to learn how to connect with people. You have to learn how to sometimes overlook certain things about people's personalities that may not fit you a certain way, but you have goals in that classroom. So I tell my kids, you have goals.
Yeah.
That person's personality is not your goal.
Yeah.
So I need for you to figure out how to adjust, how to be you, but how to also meet your teacher where they are. And they're like, what? Yes, this is a skill that you're going to
Yes.
need in the real
Yes.
world when you're
Yes.
working with
Yes.
multiple personalities and diverse people.
Yep.
That's
How do you
something you're going to have
navigate
to
that?
learn.
Yes. How do you navigate that? And how
And so
ultimately do you get what you need out of that?
And so here's where we start practicing. And we work through that. I teach Avid along with history. And I love Avid because it just gives us the opportunity to have so many real world conversations.
Can I tell you that you were the first person to ever say avid to me? And I remember,
Really?
yes, I remember you saying it. I'm like, I don't have no idea what she's talking about. I had to go to my room and get on the internet and pretend like I had already known what avid was. And then like you had talked about some strategies that you use. And that's when I started using them was after you told
Yay.
me about them.
See,
So
Avid is what I evangelize if you really want to know. I
like,
love
seriously,
Avid.
that's like, and so you converted me. Just know.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes, that is really I'm avidacious was what we call it all the way. I love the Avid program. It's
You
just
told
it's
me about a
wonderful.
conference you go to too, right? You had gone
Mhm.
to a couple of.
Oh yes. Oh, the Avid conference, summer conference is everything. It is the first place where I went as a brand new teacher. I was an Avid tutor actually, and I became a teacher. I became an Avid teacher. And when I went to that first Avid conference, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
wow." It was it was like mind altering, life changing. The strategies and everything were really great, but it was really just the people and the
Yeah.
personalities and connecting with other people who had a heart for the kids that I wanted to serve. And not in a, oh, poor you type of way, but in a, this education system that we have is what we have. All
Mm-hmm.
right. It's got some pieces and some parts that are broken
Yeah.
and bent.
Yep.
And so while we're working on fixing those pieces that are broken and
Yes.
bent, we're also going to do what we can to make sure that you thrive in this system as well. And so that's how I see Avid. Avid is about helping kids thrive in the system that we have. And on the other hand, other organizations and other systems that are about fixing what is broken and bent in the system. And I think both of those are necessary because we can complain about the system and have how it needs to be fixed and what's broken and what's bent, and that has its place, but it's not going to change overnight.
Yeah,
It didn't get built overnight, so it won't change overnight. It does need to change, but
absolutely.
it takes time.
I almost
And
see it as
so
like a giant Jenga where I'm taking one piece, this broken piece out, but then
mhm,
I'm sliding on another layer here, and before long, the whole building is going to be new because I'm going to be pulling things out that I see that aren't wrong, that and not the whole thing, so that it all collapses, but certain
right, right.
pieces I'm pulling and saying, yeah, no, that's not going to work. Let's get a new foundation here. Let's do this.
I love that because when I see that in my mind, I see the scaffold that
Yeah,
surround the piece that's being worked on right
yeah,
now. And so that's kind of how I see Avid for as we are, dismantling systems and we
yep,
are reworking certain parts and pieces. Well, if you just take everything away, it's going to crumble.
yep. And who
But when
loses
we
when it crumbles?
Exactly. But when we have those structures, those, bars and beams that
Mhm.
scaffold it during that process, we are able to still have some functionality. We're able to still have some progress and things of that nature. And so, it's like, yeah, we have a system that is racist and that is, systematically racist in some parts of it, that is inequitable in some parts of it. And so, as we are dismantling those pieces, when we find them, we do still need to have scaffolding and, bars and beams in place so that parts of it can still be usable
Yeah,
for those who are coming through it.
yeah. So that we're not
And
harming students,
so
ultimately.
that we're not exactly so that we're not just, completely throwing them to the wayside and leaving them without anything. And so I really love the Avid program because that's in my mind, that's how I see it. And it really gives me a chance to reach those kids. Not, I always hope that I could reach more and I want to grow the program and everything. But for those kids that I do have a chance to, it's beautiful
Yeah.
to see it as a safety net to get them from one side to the other side while we're in the process of making it so that they can walk through on their own.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What is one thing that you think people need to unlearn about education or the intersection of education and faith? What would be some unlearning that you think people have to do?
I am really, because I'm passionate about people knowing their purpose and walking in that, the first thing that we have to unlearn is this system where we credit and weigh and value one gift above another.
Hmm.
Because and this is a easy trap to fall into, especially in my generation, because we got taught and we were
It's all
we were
comparison.
we were grilled into,
Yep.
here is what success is.
Yep.
Here's the blueprint. You follow this blueprint,
Yep.
you are successful. Boom, done. And that's what how we were cultured to think, and how we were raised, and how we grew up to thinking that this is success. And when we have that mindset that this snapshot is what success is, well, if this is success, then everything around it is unsuccessful.
Hmm.
And when we frame
Not binary.
narratives,
Yeah.
it's not. I love the either or, the both and of education in particular. And so when we can free ourselves of this narrative that this is success and this is unsuccessful, that this is correct and this is wrong,
Hmm.
it's amazing
Hmm.
what kids will be able to see themselves doing in the future when
Hmm.
they have that freedom to really think about who they are, what they want, how do they see themselves. And it's easier to do that when you are not trying to only picture yourselves in the frame of success, when you can just be free to imagine what brings you joy, what makes you happy, what makes you feel good, what makes you feel like you are purposed in this world. What does that look like to you? What does that feel like to you? Close your eyes.
I
What do
think
you
you
see
get
yourself
people
doing?
there in a system that is constantly about grading and assessing and making putting kind of in a system that puts people in a box or a B box or
I
What?
mean, it's a real challenge. It really is. We do a lot of work on dismantling narratives, really. And you do that by exposure to other narratives.
Mhm.
It's like, well, what if we thought about it like this?
Mm,
Just let's just imagine. But that first starts with building an environment where it's safe to question and to ask what
mhm.
if I come in and I have an air and an environment that says this is success, then it's you don't feel safe to
I would shut
imagine.
down. Right.
Right. Okay, well, I have to line up in this classroom and this is what it looks like in this classroom to be successful. So I need to do that. But if I come in and I say, hey, we're all on a learning journey. All right. Some of us run, some of us walk, some of us we sprint every now and then, but we're all on this journey together. It paints a different narrative and it creates an environment where we can question and we can wonder aloud and together and do it in a safe space where you know you're not going to be told that's wrong, that's stupid, that's dumb.
Mhm.
Why would you say that? First thing first, we do in my classroom, we learn we don't do any of that. Where this is going to be a space that is going to be safe. Let's practice what that looks like, what that sounds like, what that feels like. What do we do when that's not what's happening, and how do we correct that? And we do that over and over and over again, because once we get over that hump, it's magic.
Yes.
It's magic.
Because
It's
then kids
beautiful.
have internalized it. So you
Yeah.
model it enough, and then it becomes part of the culture of the classroom, and then hopefully the culture of who they are.
Hopefully I've been in the classroom particularly for 8 years, and so I've seen my first sets of kids go out into the real world, and they'll text me or they'll say, oh, they'll send me a message or an email, and it's beautiful
Hmm.
to see
Hmm.
that they really got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they'll come back and they'll be like, okay, I didn't get it, but now that I got it, I know I didn't get it when you were telling me, but I
Yeah.
do remember you telling me. I
But
remember
you were right then. Yes, exactly. I
I
know
remember when.
some of the greatest joy is like now I'm friends with students on Facebook and like seeing them, like being a little voyeur in their life and saying, wow, I knew you when. And to see you
Hmm.
now, it's like I'm beaming with pride because
Yeah.
you did that.
And I think celebrating those students across the spectrum
Yes.
of their lives, and I'll bring my former students back, and I'm not just going to bring back the ones that went into corporate America or
Yeah.
the ones that got into Harvard.
Yeah.
I will bring back also my students who went to HEC and who are working, at a nonprofit organization, or the students who are building their own and they're trying entrepreneurship route.
Yeah.
And it's like when you bring all of those types of success stories into the classroom and you're like, oh, I have a student who's doing this, I'm so proud of them. Kids hear that.
Hmm. Hmm.
They hear that and they're like, I want to come back to your classroom and talk to your talk to your kids. I'm like,
That's
come
what I
on.
miss about middle school. That's the thing that I miss most about being a middle school teacher and was hard for me to disconnect from is the fact that where will they come back to?
Mhm.
Like
Oh yeah.
every year they would come back to my classroom and I'm like I almost like I've left a home where they can't
Hmm.
come back to. So if any of my students are watching this, you can my email is home, come back to me. So I could
Okay.
exactly because I just missed that. That's what I missed most. And a lot of times it wasn't those students. And well, I won't say that. I had students too who were from myriad walks of life that would
Mhm.
come back, and I'd say, okay, well, y'all helping me teach today, so put your
Tell
game
them what I told you.
face.
Tell them what I told you was true.
Exactly,
Oh yeah,
exactly,
go ahead. Go ahead.
exactly.
Okay.
So let me ask you this. Who is your page for? Is Prayer and Pedagogy for teachers? Is it for parents? Who, in fact, is the page for?
So, prayer and pedagogy in its entirety is for educators. My heart is for educators. My co-laborers is how I think of educators. Now, educators is broad because educators are teachers, paras are educators,
Mhm.
parents are educators, professors, pastors are educators
Absolutely.
of a sort. And so my page is for educators who are seeking inspiration, elevation, and education, because my intent is to one, inspire, because when you feel motivated, encouraged, inspired, you get that woke up in the morning, let's get it, type of vibe where you're like, yes, this lesson is about to be lit. Everything is about,
Yeah.
you walk into the building and it's
Yeah.
just like, yes, this day is about to be, you just kind of switch modes. And I love bringing that to my co-laborers. I love it because I know what it feels like when I'm in that mode and that mindset, and I also know what it feels like when I'm not.
Yes. Yes.
It's not about painting a perfect image of a teacher that has it all together every single day. And no, my lesson plans, one, don't get turned in on time. Sorry about that. I'm working on it. Um,
And
always.
then sometimes
And
you put in a lot of effort into something that flops in that classroom.
and that happens as well. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah, I walk in with the strut and I'm like, and then I leave with the, oh my goodness, what happened? Well, let me ask you this. What advice would you give to parents and other educators during this time of COVID, distance learning, life?
everything.
Exactly.
um, my number one message, I guess, so to speak, has been grace. So
Mm-hmm.
much grace, the need for grace. I think a lot of the frustration that we're experiencing is coming from the fact that we have a normal, and we like our normal. I love my normal. Okay. um
Comfortable in it.
where exactly, we worked very hard to be able to function in our normal, and now normal has been turned upside down and inside out and backwards and forwards and all the dimensions. um and so I think a lot of that frustration is coming from people trying to fit normal into abnormal. I know for me, and the school, the way that we're trying to make school be normal, I think is such a disservice to the fact that it's not. And it's nothing wrong or scary about acknowledging
Yep.
that it's not normal, and
Yep.
that sometimes we have these seasons of abnormal.
Yep.
But I do think what is most important is that we are gracious in the seasons of abnormal. Um, and so it's like being gracious to yourself, that you are not maintaining the certain standard of normal that you think you're supposed to maintain. Be gracious to your students, that
Mm.
they are experiencing and coming with different. I mean, I had a kid today. She's always boom, 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 boom. But when we switched to the shutdown, she disappeared. And
Mm.
that was so unlike her, because in my classroom, physical classroom, she's boom, 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 100, 100, 100. And in the virtual space, I was like, hey, what's happening? What's going on? And her normal and at school and her normal at home are worlds apart.
Yes.
And so if I had had the same expectations, I didn't lower them because she could not meet them, but
Exactly.
I adjusted them
Exactly.
to meet her new normal.
Yes.
And so much of what we're doing right now is trying to fit normal into abnormal and then being frustrated when it doesn't fit.
Yep.
And I think we can learn a lesson about grace from just backing and breathing and acknowledging abnormal
Mm-hmm.
and adjusting to abnormal
Mm.
and knowing that it's okay.
It's
Like,
okay.
it
And that
really
normal might not, whatever normal was, might not come back. I think,
might not ever be, and we'll have a new normal.
yep. I think we have to, I think that's something that we kind of have to reckon with, because I think people are, oh, I can't wait for normal to come back. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry to tell you, but I don't think normal is coming back.
Right. The new normal will be here
Yeah.
shortly.
Exactly. So it exists where we exist now.
Yeah, my daughter, she loves Daniel Tiger, and so do I. He has all the songs for everything. But she goes around the house singing this one song, and it's such a great reminder. It's so simple. It's enjoy the wow that's happening now. And it's so cute. It's so Daniel Tiger. But she just goes around, enjoy the wow that's happening now. And she sings it randomly, but it's such a great reminder because there's so much to be frustrated about, upset about, angry about. And that's not wrong. But there are wows that
Yeah,
are happening.
yeah.
And sometimes we just need to take a second to enjoy the wow that's happening now
The
while we
wisdom
have
of
it.
Daniel the Tiger, huh?
Daniel Tiger is all the things. Okay. I love Daniel
But that's
Tiger.
big. That's like some real knowledge.
It is really real.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I was like, come through, Daniel Tiger. Okay.
Seriously. Seriously.
Daniel Tiger with the, like Daniel Tiger has a few songs. You know, the breathe and count to four.
You're gonna
I'm
be
like,
making me turn on some stuff. My family's gonna come be like, Mom, what are you doing?
I'm enjoying the wow that's happening now. Okay.
Exactly. I'm just experiencing the wisdom of Daniel Tiger.
Yes.
Well, I thank you so much. I'm going to go with my rapid fire last few
Mhm.
questions for you so that you can get back to those beautiful children that you have. What are you reading now, or what do you suggest to us to read?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I have so many books.
I knew for educator, I knew this was like a trap question.
It is because I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
which one? I, you know, it will sound corny as I'll get out, but honestly, the Bible.
Mhm.
And I know that's such a Jesus answer, but I had just posted the other day, in the Bible app, they have the counter that tells you, how many days you've been reading it consistently. And I had just hit 1,000. And I shared, I was like, this is the thing. I know it's like 1,000 days, but taking a moment every day to get into the word, to get the word into me, more importantly, I was like, this is the secret. It's not a secret.
Mhm.
This is the thing that really kind of helps keep me centered. I am, I love reading. There's so many books that are out right now and so many books that are popular. I mean, you can't even get them off Amazon
Yes.
about, equity in the classroom, about, loving and teaching our Black and brown babies. But all of those things you can find bits and pieces of in the word. And so, cliche, I know, but I gotta go. I gotta go with the good book.
I should have known you was gonna say that. I should have saved that question. I knew you was gonna. Good answer, though. Is there something that you yourself want to unlearn?
Ooh, yeah. Well, I am unlearning what leadership looks like and
Mm,
what it doesn't look like. It has been a very interesting journey on what it means to be a leader, so to speak. And people have books and templates and, do's and don'ts for leadership. But as systems and worlds and people and communities change, what is real, authentic, useful, helpful leadership? What does that mean?
mm,
And so I think I'm kind of unlearning because I don't necessarily see myself as a leader type person because I have a very specific picture of what a leader is. And I don't always see myself matching that picture. And so I think unlearning leadership and learning servanthood really is kind of what I'm working on right
well, can
now.
I tell you, you are absolutely a leader because the way you marched me around Oxford looking for that car to go to Stonehenge that day, my friend,
Oh,
oh my goodness. I would have
I'm
followed
still
you
waiting.
anyway because you were determined.
I was.
So,
I'm still determined.
yes, you are. You're still the epitome of leadership. That was leadership to me. Your determination was incredible that day.
Thank you.
We were around Oxford, and I think we walked every block.
Every block.
Fine, because Pratia wanted to go to Stonehenge, and I was scared to death about driving on the opposite end of the car. And she talked to me. She's like, "No, you're going to do this. You're going to be okay. You're going to do it. When we
We're gonna make it.
you're going to make it, and we're going to get there." By the time we got there, the place was closed. But after we had
but we were ready.
Exactly. But I was pumped up and I was ready. I was like, I can do it. I can do it. I can drive on the other side of the road. I can do it. We're going to go to Stonehenge. Even if it's dark, 5 of us are going to fit in this little car. And
we were ready.
That was leadership, by the way.
Thank you.
What is your hope for the world?
My ultimate hope for the world is that people will know love, that people will know what it is to be loved. Honestly, that is the thing that, you know, I'm very lucky to have grown up in a household where I felt loved, family, community. I had a strong village, and it broke my heart to think that there were people who did not. I did not even know that that could be, you know, necessarily a possibility. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh, that can't be the case. So if I have any opportunity to make somebody feel loved, to know love, that is my hope for the world.
That's awesome. And then where can people find you? So on Facebook, it's Prayer and Pedagogy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then, where are the other spaces?
I'm Prayer and my blog is Prayer and Pedagogy on Facebook, on Twitter, it's Prayer_Pedagogy, Instagram, Prayer and Pedagogy, YouTube, got my YouTube channel up and running finally. Also Prayer and Pedagogy. I'm so excited.
YouTube will change your life.
You know, what I realized was that I really do love helping people. I do, and I'm this technology thing. It's my home. I'm comfortable with it. I'll click on things until I figure it out. But what is exhausting is explaining the same thing to 30 different people. So I was like, what do I do in my class? I screencast.
Yes.
That's just YouTube. I just do the exact same thing.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, so you have this issue. Let me make a video and get that out to you, and you can watch it as much as you need to and slow it down.
Yeah, exactly.
2 tab it side by side. And so I love helping people. I love helping teachers, especially with this technology stuff, because I know it's not everybody's gifting, but it is one of mine. And so, yeah, getting into that space has been enlightening, but it's been really encouraging.
That's awesome. So when is your book coming out?
Ooh, child. I'm working on a devotional.
I'm speaking things into existence. I don't know. Oh, are you really working on one?
I am working on a devotional. Now I use the term working on it very loosely because I've been working on it for a while, but I'm really excited. I have this thing in my heart, and so I gotta write it out, get it out.
I see it for you.
I can't, because God is going to keep annoying me about it until I'm obedient. So working on that, and we'll see what else he tells me to do.
Okay. Well, we cannot wait to hear more from you. And so if you are looking for a place to find the intersection of faith and education, or if you just want to see what good teaching looks like, then you need to check out all the media forms that Pratia has, because that's where you will find a great educator with a great heart. So thank you so much, Pratia, for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I'm so blessed to have met you.
Look, Oxford was amazing. And one of the most amazing things that have come out of that opportunity was meeting fantastic history teacher of the year type educators such as yourself. It really opened my eyes and opened my mind to what it means to be a good educator, because that group was so diverse. I mean, it was
we had people from all different types of schools and areas of the country. I remember the person who taught in Northern Cal, and then the person who taught in Connecticut at a boarding school, and having all of those people with all those different gifts come together, it actually exploded my teaching. I came back with a
Same.
breakfast. Yeah.
Yes, it was all the things. It was magic, and I'm very grateful, and to still be connected to people like you, Keisha, and to others who are just out here really making education happen. And it'd be like, oh, her.
Well, that's when I saw the prayer and pedagogy thing like blowing up. I was like, oh my God, like I know her. Like I'm famous by proxy because I know her.
It has been fantastic. So yeah, definitely. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful.
Hi, well, thank you. I appreciate all that you are and all that you've done. And thank you for giving me some of your time today.